The Victorian era was presented to us through literature and film as a time of something beautiful. A time of progress and change in society, ladies in beautiful dresses, men in austere suits, an era of splendid events, finery and passionate love. Behind it all were cases of sickness, filth and stench. Today you and I will dive headlong into the enclosure and try to piece together how bad things were there. This is Learning the World, let's go. In Victorian times it was fashionable to wear beautiful clothes. But because of street dust or bodily secretions, sometimes these clothes had to be washed. So what did people do with these clothes? Usually there were two answers: they gave them to servants or simply didn't wash them. Naturally, the second statement is not entirely true. You wouldn't throw away an expensive dress or tailored jacket, would you? So in order to avoid doing laundry, the Victorians began to treat them with the proper frugality. If washing was inevitable, believe me, soap alone was not enough. The servants used the most sophisticated methods of laundry that were available at the time. For example, if you've spoiled your evening gown with grease, the maid will be happy to use chalk to remove the stains. Did a drop of wax fall on you from a burning candle while you were walking to the potty? Turpentine will help you. Were you writing a letter to your sweetheart and the ink got on your white cuff? Milk will do the trick. It does look like some life hack, but it's better to come out clean and smell like turpentine than to be unaccepted in society. To shine among beautiful ladies or to turn the heads of high-ranking gentlemen, you need a dazzling smile. A wooden toothbrush will help you do just that. But in England, as we remember, there were always problems with dentists. According to this, people tried as much as possible to take care of their own mouth with all available means. Wooden toothbrush was not available to everyone. To be more precise, only sufficiently wealthy people use such a boon. But to wrap a rag on a stick, chew celery, or rub salt in your teeth to remove plaque, you're welcome. By the way, salt was sprinkled on a wound where a child's tooth had fallen out. It seems that the expression pouring salt on wounds takes on new colors. And if that's not enough for you, just imagine that you lived during the reign of Queen Victoria and you happen to have a toothache. As solutions, you will be offered pain-relieving self-medication methods. You can hang a rabbit's tooth or a hedgehog's tooth around your neck. A small piece of cat skin is also great. As a last resort, you can use a loose baby tooth, a wound that you just salted away. It looks like a trophy. If the toothache still continues to plague you for some strange reason, you can scratch your gum with a clove and put a piece of oak bark to it. Why are you squirming? Are you still in pain? Well, that leaves one last kind of painkiller: sucking on a frog. If you can't catch the frog, there's only one solution: vomit it out. True, for lack of dentists near your place of residence, you have to go to the blacksmith. If you still want to avoid a meeting with the blacksmith, the dentist, then we recommend you daily, at least twice a day, use toothpaste. It is true that the first toothpaste did not appear until 1890, so we will prepare it for today's toothpaste day. Typically, 40 grams of charcoal, 20 grams of dried cinquefoil bark, 15 grams each of ground iris root and chalk, and 15 drops of bergamot or lavender oil to taste. Clean teeth and fragrant breath is ensured for the rest of the century. First came the toilets and then the sewers and other plumbing, which spread among all the accumulated cases, did not linger in the houses. Before sewers, a huge hole was dug under the places of seclusion. This would help get rid of overnight pots and pinpoint the exact location where you can adjust your need. But the problem of odor stood firmly before the owners. After all, at one time this pit was filling up and the stench was getting worse. Before there was a sewage system that funneled all the excrement and filth down the Thames River, people needed heroes. These heroes were special workers, who honorably cleaned the stink pits and later sold all the collected waste to farmers. They, in turn, used the waste as fertilizer. It is noteworthy that the cleaning works were carried out only at night, as it was believed that during the day the smell could disturb the townspeople. By the 1860s, the first public toilets begin to appear in London, and the houses are fully equipped with sewage, which allows you to fully enjoy the immersion in their own mind. Today each of us is well aware of what a shower is and how important it is in our daily lives. After all, you don't want to spew the stench of your sweat glands on the poor girl in public transport, do you? While modern man usually bathes twice a day, Victorians did it a little less frequently. There was a good reason for that. In the Victorian era, the standard of beauty was thick, long hair. Since shampoo wasn't invented until the late 19th century, it was difficult to wash your hair. Women used products prepared entirely at home. Special oils, soaps and balsams. The difficulty was that after these home remedies, the hair became as stiff as a washcloth. When combing and styling, madam could lose half of her strands. Naturally, the fear that bathing caused disease still hovered on the outskirts of cities. And so it was still possible to find unkempt, dirty, and smelly people in the streets. Also, most of the so-called elite, too, tried to avoid bathing for fear of all sorts of diseases. But in order not to arouse obvious suspicion, they often invented excuses. It was something like not taking a bath for 3 or 4 hours after eating. Of course, we still use a similar rule today, but we refer to it more specifically to swimming than to showering. To keep hair clean, the Victorians put a special pomade on it. You could buy it at your local shop or make your own. Usually they used sweet-scented extracts of oils and wax to create the pomade. It made the hair more manageable while combing and kept gorgeous strands on the head of the hostess. It is noteworthy that this type of cosmetics was also used by men. During the Victorian era, there were two main standards of beauty. The first was the faithful, obedient, silent wife in the image of a nun, which was the pure and chaste one. And the second was a wild, unbridled fury, who represented her sexuality with all her appearance, her open shoulders and neck. A kind of forbidden fruit for married gentlemen. Naturally, all this beauty had to be somehow maintained. In spite of general progress, cosmetics and general self-care remained at a primitive level. Naturally, everything was learned by trial and error, but this era belonged to the former. Beginning in the 1800s, a pale complexion prevailed among women. It was the one that indicated that a woman was rich enough and did not leave the house to work in some fields. To achieve the effect of a pale face, a small amount of opium was applied overnight. A small amount of opium was applied at night, and in the morning they washed their faces with ammonia. Arsenic was very good for removing pigment spots and freckles. Of course, they all understood that arsenic itself is an extremely harmful substance. Moreover, it was already being sold on the streets as a poison for rodents, but as they say, beauty requires sacrifice. But even greater sacrifices were made by those who dreamed of a perfect figure. As in fashion were corsets, the ladies had to maintain slimness. But sometimes you want to eat a delicious cupcake at dinner. What to do? It's simple. Before she began to lose weight, the woman would eat tapeworm eggs and the parasite would settle in her body. Basically, she could eat almost anything and not get fat. When the unwanted weight was lost, they consumed special pills that killed all the foulness in the body and quietly got into the right corset. Perhaps this is not the best diet. Dying in those days was a bad form. Usually a brightly colored woman was a member of the most ancient profession. Nevertheless, the noble ladies still wanted to outline their white face and used eyeshadows. But the composition of this type of cosmetics was very questionable. Shadows were made of lead, mercury and harmful dyes, which over time corroded the skin, poisoning the body. There were cases where the use of this type of facial ennoblement led to mental illness. In the 19th century, cholera epidemics were commonplace. From 1831 to 1866 alone, there were 4 huge outbreaks of the disease in Britain. One inventor even tried to patent a cholera underpants belt that would supposedly save from the disease by covering the intimate parts of the body and in addition would warm the stomach. But a doctor named John Snow concluded that the disease entered the body by other means. The Victorians believed that all disease was in the polluted air. So they tried to avoid poor neighborhoods and highly polluted places. Many doctors in history believed that the cleaner the air, the less chance you had of catching cholera and other diseases. But not only was there less chance of catching it, but they also believed that clean air helped cure sick people. Even now we often ventilate when someone is sick in the house. Dirty air was a frequent phenomenon during the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain. Factories caused unpleasant smells, unsanitary conditions, and disease. The same Dr. John Snow concluded that people did not catch cholera from dirty air, but from ingestion of contaminated substances. Infrequent bathing in bad water in which sewage was discharged contributed to it. In addition to its practical shortcomings, Victorian hygiene also raised doubts about its theories. Menstruation was not thought to be a normal process in women as we know it today, but a disease. Doctors theorized that this cycle could lead to severe ailments in the body. If a woman was accompanied by pain, there was clearly something wrong with her. They strongly advised against reading books and generally not engaging in mental activities that could cause any emotion due to the blood flowing to the brain. Instead, they suggested that ladies engage in house cleaning, cooking, or laundry. The Thames River was the epicenter for the drainage of the sewer system and the environment. Past the sewers and locals, waste from hospitals and factories was discharged into the Thames. In spite of all this, the river was used by the inhabitants as a source of drinking water. The stench was so strong that townspeople simply could not stay outside or open their windows. To avoid the smell, the windows of the houses were covered with thick cloth soaked in chlorine. Doctors blamed the stench for many diseases, citing the theory of miasma. And only John Snow, by this time, had managed to prove his point that the cause of mass disease was the water, not the stench that was plaguing the city. The summer of 1858 in London was called the Great Stench. What do you think? Would you have enjoyed living in Victorian times? Write in the comments. That's all for today. Subscribe to the channel and give me some likes. Goodbye, everyone.